everyone. It is 6 a.m. and we are ready to begin. 6 p.m. Right. I'm still in the morning. Yeah. All over. And so we are ready to begin. As I shared with you, each candidate, as they're called up, will have an opportunity to sit here, introduce themselves, answer a few questions. Right now I have a listing of 10 candidates that will be before you, so we're going to give everybody about seven minutes each so that we can get through the evening, and then of course leave time for questions and answers at the end. Okay? And so the first candidate that we have on is will be the candidates for the role of county executive, and our first candidate is Mr. Jim Brochin. Please join us. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here and being the first one on the hot seat. So
yes. Well, the first thing we'd like for you to do is to introduce yourself. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you live, the role that you are running for, what candidate position, and why you decided to run for office.
So I am State Senator Jim Brochin. I've been in the Maryland Senate for 16 years. I live in Cockeysville, Maryland. And after 16 years in the Maryland Senate, I've decided to run for county executive for a few reasons. First of all, I spent the last 5 or 6 years in the Senate, spending a lot of my time working with constituents to stop overdevelopment. And I think as county executive, we need a county executive who's going to protect and preserve open space and green space. I think we need more parks, more ball fields, more rec centers in Baltimore County. And I think somebody needs to step up and finally say we can't develop every square inch of Baltimore County and pour concrete all over Baltimore County, and we need more green space. So that's the first reason. Second thing is I've seen an opioid epidemic across this state as a state legislator that is beyond belief. Baltimore County has the second highest rate of overdoses in the state of Maryland. And I think we need more leadership and vision when it comes to opioid abuse. I want to build the first residential treatment center in Baltimore County. And more importantly, I want to do what Anne Arundel County is doing. We need to look at what Anne Arundel County is doing, where if you're an addict and it's time and you know that you can't live the life you're living anymore, you can go to a police station, you can go to a fire station, and you can basically say, I'm ready for treatment, and you can get treatment on demand. And we need to do what Anne Arundel County is doing and offer treatment on demand for the citizens of Baltimore County. All of us, you know, I go across my district and I talk about opioid addiction, and I see heads that start to nod because everybody has a friend, a family member, and we know treatment might not work the first, second, or third time, but we need to keep at it because there's a lot of people who have addiction issues that can be saved, and I think we have a moral obligation to do it. Last issue that I think is equally as important is the homelessness. We need to look at best practices across the country. Cuyahoga County in Ohio has something called Housing First. It's an initiative where they've made a conscious decision that, you know what, it doesn't make sense to take homeless people and give them day treatment centers, come in, feed them, give them the services they need, and then 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock comes and they're back out on the street again. And they're ravaged by the weather, by addiction issues, and being assaulted or things like that. We need to look at our homeless population and start a pilot program where we give our homeless apartments where they can have treatment brought to them. They can get their Social Security benefits, they can get living skills treatment, they can get psychological and psychiatric services. We can partner with things like Vehicle for a Change to get them vehicles and help them find jobs and start to, so they can turn their lives around and so we can do better. One more thing that I think is equally important is Baltimore County has a lot of trash on the streets. I mean, it is unbelievable. Plastic bags, bottles, cans, it is unbelievable. We need to start a program where we pay people to bring in plastic bags and bottles and things like that and work on recycling. We need to start a public-private partnership so we have a cleaner Baltimore County. And I think it would be really neat to have the vision and do a public-private partnership to start with that. So those are just some ideas that are popping through my head over last year or two, which have moved me from leaving a Senate seat that's very safe, that I've had for 16 years, that I think it's time to move to the next venue.
Thank you, Jim, for that thorough explanation. And I'm going to give you a question. You should have enough time left. Talk to us a little bit about some jurisdictions provide real estate tax discounts for their seniors. Would you consider introducing or supporting such a bill like that in Baltimore County?
So that is a fantastic question, and guess what just happened Friday? I'm the chairman of the Baltimore County Senate delegation, and we had a bill in our committee that was introduced by Shirley Nathan Pulliam, and we voted it out of delegation, and I supported it. And now if you're up to 150% of the poverty level, and Senator Kelly was a supporter of it also, then you are going to receive a tax credit against your property taxes. So the answer is yes. I'm a co-sponsor of it, and we got it out of delegation, so now it's on its way to budget and taxation.
Awesome.
And it's time. It really is. You know, our seniors are on fixed incomes, and I think this is. I mean, the salary threshold's pretty low. Also, I mean, this is a salary threshold if you're making $16,000 a year or less, and you're not eligible for any of the other credits that Baltimore County offers.
Thank you so much. That's your 7 minutes.
That's my 7.
Thank you.
Okay. I apologize for not staying for the Q&A, but I have to get to Annapolis because session starts at 8 o'clock. But thank you very much for your time and listening.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Johnny O. Is he here?
I'm here.
Hi.
Hi.
Come on. Yes.
How you doing?
Great. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Thanks, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Good evening.
Yeah.
I'm Johnny O, and
Yes.
I'm running for Baltimore County Executive as well. I'm running because I think it's time that we start doing big things in Baltimore County and we stop waiting to do them. We do them right now. I'm running because it's about our future, a future that has come very much into perspective for me and through the eyes of my daughter, Daria, who's 2 years old. And I want the best for all our families and all of our children, including my own. You know, Baltimore County has been very good to me. I have been honored and blessed to grow up in Baltimore County. I grew up in eastern Baltimore County, over in the Dundalk community. I remember hearing the blast furnace in Sparrows Point as I was a kid. And you know, it's a gritty sound, but it is very comforting to me because I knew growing up that the people and the families I grew up with had access to a good job with wages and benefits and health care and a pension that they could provide for their family and pursue their version of the American dream. But I also saw what happened is that sound went away, and as people lost their jobs, they lost their homes, they lost their hope. In the midst of all that, my community instilled in me a work ethic and values about working hard and giving back, and family and faith. And I was fortunate enough to be, after going through the Baltimore County public school system, the first in my family to graduate from college here in Baltimore County. I went to Goucher College in Towson. It's where I met my wife, Marissa. Went on to actually got a PhD recently from UMBC this past December. But I moved back to eastern Baltimore County to become a teacher because education was so fundamental as a value in terms of what we can do for all our kids. And in addition to being a teacher in the school system, I ran and was a member of the state legislature as a delegate over in eastern Baltimore County for 9 years, and was proud of fighting for working families and education and transforming the landscape. Over in eastern Baltimore County, we now have Trade Point Atlantic, creating tens of thousands of jobs on the horizon. We have national retail in eastern Baltimore County for the first time in my lifetime, and I was pleased to be a part of that transformation. But most importantly, as I said to start, my wife and I, we're raising a family in Baltimore County now, and it's about the future and what that future looks like. And what I want listeners and everyone in this room to know is what you get with Johnny Olszewski as Baltimore County Executive are better schools, more jobs, and an open, accessible, transparent government that works for you. Now in schools, what you'll get from me is we're going to feed our kids. I've seen what it's like when kids aren't fed. If your stomachs aren't full, you can't fill the mind. And so we're going to expand both our breakfast programs and our lunch programs. We're going to invest in a 21st century school infrastructure plan because no kid should have to learn in buildings that have brown drinking water or are literally sliding into the ground. We're not going to pit communities against each other. We're going to make sure that all our schools are top-notch and that every kid is learning in a new or like-new building. And lastly, we're going to invest in the people that matter most, which are our teachers and our students. Baltimore County has been woefully underfunding positions like pupil personnel workers and school counselors and school psychologists, and we have to up our game to invest in those services, wraparound services, to create community schools, and to lower class sizes. And that's what you'll get with Johnny Olszewski as your county executive. On jobs, I'll expand the kind of work I did in the legislature. I was the primary sponsor of a bill called EARN, Employment Advancement Right Now, where we partnered with the private sector to find out what jobs existed. And actually, I'm really proud that the county executive is going to be proposing legislation right here in Baltimore County called Job Connector that replicates exactly what I did in Annapolis. We've created thousands of jobs across the state and grown that program from a $4 million program under Governor O'Malley to a $10 million program under Governor Hogan. I am best positioned to make sure that that Jobs Connector program gets off the ground and is successful here in Baltimore County. But I'll also affirm the dignity of work when people are having those jobs and are connected. That's why I'm proud to be the only candidate who has publicly announced my support for a $15 statewide minimum wage. It's why I will make sure that people can get to work, and I will establish a Department of Transportation as Baltimore County Executive, and I will make sure that people can live in the county they work, and I'm the only candidate, Republican or Democrat, who supports ending housing discrimination here in Baltimore County. Lastly, I'll make sure it's a government that's open, accessible, and transparent, that works for you. You might find it hard to believe, in our $3.5 billion budget, with 830, give or take, thousand residents, if you wanted to take a venture to guess, how many people, some of you have heard this before, but if you had to guess, how many people testified on our budget last year in Baltimore County? Zero is the answer. And yet, when the county council had an opportunity to expand those number of budget hearings and have them throughout the county, that proposal was voted down. Similarly, most people, like tonight, are at a meeting in the evening where you can participate. You don't have to leave your job to participate. The county council, unfortunately, does a lot of their work on pieces of legislation during the day, during their work sessions. They also had an opportunity to move those council sessions to the evening, but also voted that down. I'll change both of those things as county executive. And then lastly, I will enact meaningful campaign finance reform. I'm the only candidate to have called for a public option in our campaign finance because it's time that the government belongs to you and is funded by you and is powered by you and not the special interest. So if you believe in what's possible and you want a better Baltimore County, I encourage you to join our campaign, be a part of what's possible, and let's do big things and do them right now together.
Great, thank you. Now, he used his whole 7 minutes, but I have to get one question in for him, okay? At least one. You talked a lot about the educational aspects for Baltimore County. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you would do or how you would go about increasing school safety and helping parents and communities feel safe with
Sure.
the current issues with guns and crisis in schools?
Very, very timely question. You know, as both a teacher and as a parent, that's something that's very near and dear to my heart. And I think first and foremost, what we need to do is make sure that we're investing in the school infrastructure in terms of securing the environment. Perhaps we need to invest in locking mechanisms and technologies. We can invest in other sort of security protocols. The other thing that we really need to do to make our schools safe, which is what I mentioned in my response, is invest in our people. Invest in those school counselors and school psychologists. We are, in some places, 2-to-1 over the national recommendations. And in other places, we're 10-to-1 over the national recommendations. You know, and I think what we'll do is it's equally important to say what we won't do. And what I won't do as county executive is support efforts to put more guns in our schools. I will oppose any effort to arm our teachers. And I will be very careful about school resource officers. We need to be very thoughtful about where we implement those, because I can tell you, studies have shown that actually arrests go up when there are police officers in school buildings, and there have not been statistically significant reductions or prevention of unfortunate incidents. So I can tell you, as someone who has a little girl who will be starting elementary school soon, I don't know that it's necessarily appropriate to have police officers walking around with guns in our elementary schools. So I think it's a combination of investing in the infrastructure and investing in our people, in addition to opposing things that won't help make our families safe.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Next, Miss Vicki, Almond.
Hi, Deborah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. So Vicki, if you would tell us about yourself, introduce yourself, maybe where you live, what you are running for, and why you chose to run.
My name is Vicki Almond, and right now I am the representative on the County Council for the 2nd District, which is Pikesville, Reisterstown, Owings Mills, and east over to Charles Street. This is my 8th year on the County Council. I began over 20 years ago, before elected office, as a volunteer and a community advocate. I worked in our elementary schools, middle and high schools as PTA president, as a PTA member, as whatever I needed to do in our public schools. I've always been an advocate for our children's education. From there, I worked as president of different community associations and as president of a coordinating council that had about 75 communities under it. And that's where I learned about Baltimore County and its processes, zoning, code enforcement, all those wonderful things that communities deal with all the time. And then I began to know some of our public officials, and I started campaigning and volunteering for them. So it was a life of volunteerism. And in 1996, I was instrumental in getting the School Resource Officer program in Baltimore County. And we are now 63 strong in our middle and high schools, working on some new strategies for our elementary schools, because our elementary schools are where we've missed the boat. We have a lot of children who already want to belong to something, and if it's a gang, it's a gang. But if we can save some of these kids from gangs and those who don't have the parent support that they need or grandparent support that they need, I think it's a great thing to do. As county council person, I have put together legislation that does help feed children in schools. We have a pilot program now that's been running for over a year. We have 4 schools in the program, and we feed them breakfast and lunch. They have no forms to fill out, no farm forms. The parents do not have to fill out forms, and a lot of them haven't been filling out forms, so their kids have been hungry. Whether it's a language barrier or whether it's just not wanting to have that stigma attached to their child. So in 4 of our schools, we're serving breakfast and lunch every day. We're feeding lots and lots of children who are hungry, and we are looking to implement community eligibility as they do in the city, where children are fed breakfast and lunch. We also have programs that send backpacks home on the weekends, in the summer, and we also have other areas where kids can get food as well. I've also put together an advisory group for the elderly, where we can look at our elderly citizens, and our senior citizens are growing day by day, and we can look at their issues, whether it's food, and it can be, whether it's paying their gas and electric bill, whether it's living in an assisted living or in their own apartment, or in the house they've lived in for 60 years and they just can't afford to put a new roof on or get a new furnace. There are programs that we're putting in place that will actually help to do that. We have, as a county council, we have put together several pieces of legislation for transparency and accountability, and we're very proud of that. We want that to continue to move forward. As county executive, I would do, as the county council person, I have seen what Baltimore County does well and what we can do better. And as the county executive, I would concentrate on our communities and bringing sustainability back to our communities. Our communities need a good public school, and we have issues in our public school. We can't go all over Baltimore County and just know that there's going to be a good school waiting for your kids to go to. We have to make sure that there's equity across Baltimore County and that every child has a right to a public education and gets one in a great facility with good teachers and guidance counselors and support staff, and to be safe. Also, public safety. We need to make sure our police officers and our fire people have the resources and the people that they need to keep our communities safe. The other thing to help sustainable communities is economic development. We have to take a look at smart growth. We have to bring jobs into the area. And yes, it has to be done wisely. But I was instrumental in bringing Foundry Road to Owings Mills. And I can tell you it was under a lot of duress that I did that, from a lot of people who were not happy with me at the time, other developers. But we brought Foundry Road to Owings Mills, and it's changed Owings Mills for the better. So I will end with that and answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Vicki.
Did I use my 7 minutes?
No, even so, you still get one question.
All right.
I want to go back and stay with the part on education. You spoke about it a lot. Outside of the educational system, public education, what other types of services or resources would you provide or bring to Baltimore County to support youth outside of school time?
Well, one of the things that we are lacking is recreation for families, recreation for kids. We just don't have it. We've taken the basketball nets down from our schools. Kids don't have anything to do. And to me, it's one of the most important things that we need to find a way to provide rec space for families, to rec together, to do things together. If it means another Y, if it means a community center, I believe in partnerships and relationships, and I think that we have to come together as community, as Baltimore County, and figure out where we can help our youth be more productive and stay out of trouble, and help our families bond together even more. Okay?
Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
We are moving on to our county council candidates, and we have Ms. Sheila Ruth. Hi, Sheila. Great. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself, where you live, where you're from, your role you're running for, and why you chose to run.
Great, thank you. My name is Sheila Ruth. I live in the Westview Park area of Catonsville in District 44B, Council District 1. I'm running for County Council in District 1. I have been an activist for at least a couple of years, working to help promote policies that put people and planet first. And so I'm running because I want to be able to have a role in government to make people's lives better and to improve the environment. I have done many things, including working with a group of activists from around the county to oppose the 287G program, which would have allowed the Correctional Institute to sign a contract with ICE for them to enforce immigration. There are a lot of reasons not to do that. It could have cost the county $5 million a year, in addition to being not really our correctional officer's job. So a number of us did a lot in terms of collecting petitions.
May I have your attention, please? Will the owner of a two-door silver Infiniti G37 license plate 5CX1441 please move your vehicle?
Thank you. Collecting petitions, testifying before the county council, rallying with CASA. I've done a number of other things. I've testified in Annapolis. I've attended innumerable rallies. So as I've also supported the Fight for 15 for about the last 2 years. I think it's very important that people be able to earn a living wage. And currently people can't. At the current minimum wage in Baltimore County, someone has to work 90 hours a week in order to afford a rent at fair market value. That's 2 jobs. You have to work 2 jobs just to be able to afford rent, and that's not right. That's statistics from the National Low Income Housing Coalition. And really, according to their statistics, you would have to earn $21 an hour in order to afford fair market rent at 40 hours a week. So $15 an hour is the least we can do. Now, I'm working with the Fight for 15 to try to get this passed in Annapolis, and I hope that it passes at the statewide level. But if it doesn't, and I'm elected, I will work to pass it for the county, because I think Baltimore County workers deserve a living wage. And I'm hoping also that if it passes in Baltimore County, that will provide an incentive for the city to pass it as well, because being the closest neighbor to the city, it's harder for the city to say jobs are going to leave the city because the county will also have that $15 minimum wage. And you know, research shows that a $15 minimum wage doesn't cause a loss of jobs. I also am very concerned about economic concentration. We have pockets of poverty where people are herded into low-income pockets, and racial segregation. And so one of the first things that I would want to do is to pass the HOME Act. The HOME Act would prevent housing discrimination by source of income. Essentially, right now, landlords can say they won't rent to you if you're using federal housing vouchers. Now, you know, there's a lot of misconceptions about that, but the fact is around 30% of the people using housing vouchers are seniors, and another 30% are people with disabilities, and most of the rest are just families who want to be able to have a good place to live with their children and send their children to a good school and a place that's around jobs. So, you know, we need to pass this, and I think it's disgusting that 3 out of 4 Democrats and all of the Republicans on the county council voted against this when it came up before the council in 2016. So I'm going to pass this. I'm also going to work to increase the availability of housing, of affordable housing throughout the county and not just clustered in those certain areas. The final thing I want to say is that I think the most important thing is for the county council person to treat this as a full-time job, and I would treat this as a full-time job. I'm privileged enough that I don't have to work another job in order to support myself. I can live on my husband's income, which gives me the time that I could put full-time into this. I would have regular town halls starting my first month in office in different parts of the district, because I think, you know, our district, Catonsville, and I love Catonsville, but central Catonsville tends to get a lot of the focus, and so I want to make sure we're having meetings in Woodlawn and in Lansdowne and in Baltimore Highlands and in Westview Park where I live. And I would be out in the communities meeting with people and hearing what people have to say. So there's a lot more, but I only have limited time.
Thank you so much. Let's think about if you were elected into your role, what could you do to help with increasing small business contracts for minorities in Baltimore County?
What can I do to...
Specifically for women.
For women. Well, I'm a small business owner myself, and I think it's very important to help small businesses generally. Small businesses have a difficult job competing. I have a publishing company, and I started my publishing company at a time of change in the industry, but there's a huge you know, bias towards big publishers, where small publishers have a very hard time to you know, get a foothold in the industry. And so as a woman also, I know how difficult it is to compete. And I do think it's important for minority and women-owned small businesses to you know, have some advantages. And so one of the first things I would do is really focus on small businesses in those communities which are you know, often neglected and marginalized. Certain areas of the county don't get as much attention, and I think we need to make sure we're giving incentives to small businesses that want to start up in those areas. And I think,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pete Melcavage.
Good evening,
Pete.
Deborah.
Hello.
Good evening, everyone.
Start off, introduce yourself.
My name is Pete Melcavage. I'm a lifelong resident of Baltimore. I grew up in Baltimore City in the west side. I saw things changed. I moved to Baltimore County in 2010. I am a Baltimorean true, and I went to grade school in Halethorpe. I went to high school at Cardinal Gibbons. I went to college at UMBC. I got my master's degree at the University of Maryland Graduate School. Then I went to law school at the University of Maryland. I'm running because I'm angry. I'm angry because I think government has failed, in Southwest Baltimore at least. I look at Lansdowne High School. I'm part of a community association in Baltimore Highlands. And there's a woman there who has been working night and day to try and get a new high school in Baltimore County, in Lansdowne. And she just doesn't get any support. The the whole area. There are drugs in Baltimore Highland. Every month, we come together